So welcome to the March platform update for the Skillable products. We'd love to just walk you through some of the things that have been happening over the last few weeks. Quite a lot of things are in flight at the moment. Some things that we're really sort of going to be interested to talk to you about. So we'll hopefully go with that. So start off with the Skillable TMS. So I appreciate not all customers use the Skillable TMS. So this might be something that's not too important to yourself, but ultimately lots of customers do use it. I think there's something like we did some statistics recently, and something like 78% of all labs launched on the Skillable platform are actually launched by the TMS. So it is still quite a key piece of technology. And one of the things we discovered was there was a couple of things broken from an accessibility point of view. So one of the things that you can get is like a license agreement page that comes up in an iframed window. That didn't work from an accessibility point of view because you couldn't scroll the window using a keyboard. So therefore wasn't very accessible friendly. And also, for those that have used the TMS, we have like a top navigation bar where you can sort of see things like your training, the classes that you've been enrolled in, and so on and so forth. Again, that wasn't ability to be navigated properly with the keyboard, and screen readers didn't read that information very well. So sometimes people with accessibility concerns around visual impairment and so on couldn't even see the menu, and nothing was telling them the menu was there. So they've been resolved. So hopefully making that a better experience in those use cases. In terms of Skillable Studio itself, we have a few things in flight with respect to Skillable Studio. First and foremost, with respect to Skillable Studio, is we would just like to let you know that we are looking at extending our API capability. So one of the things we're looking at is actually enabling API from a management point of view. Okay, so one of the things we understand, and it's one of the things we're looking at, is managing Skillable lab profiles at scale is really hard. You know, our platform doesn't lend itself to that natively, and there are a few ways that that can be improved, either through UI features or by providing the ability to script. So one of the things that we're looking at initially is the ability to manage activities via API. So create activities, read them, update them, delete them, those sorts of things. So currently this is in closed beta. So this will be something that we will be making available to the wider community in the coming weeks and months, once the closed beta has finished, and we've sort of made sure that it aligns with those key customers that actually asked us for this capability. Last month's lab developer workshop was on VM endpoints. So some of you hopefully would have noticed that VM endpoints was actually released partly last week, but then we finished doing the release on Monday or Tuesday this week. So VM endpoints are now available inside the Skillable Studio platform. You can use them. We do mark them as beta. We mark them as beta because there are certain things that we can't really test until we let the customer get access to it. Things like scale. You know, do they perform well at scale, and things along those lines. We've taken obviously all of our years of knowledge and thinking we've sort of got the system set up right, but you always learn something when it gets into the hands of customers. Plus, there are also features, and those that attended the lab developer workshop last month, we talked about some of the things we want to add to this, so that we still see this as beta because we know we've got stuff in flight, in development for coming features and capability. Okay, so they got released, which is great. We did make a couple of quick little changes. The main one being that if you now fill in the description field for endpoints, that now appears as a tooltip actually on the lab client, which can be really useful for giving users a lot more use information. The other thing that we also published is, if I can find the right app, here we go. We also published the initial documentation for custom VM endpoints. So this is live on our docs website today. Okay. We will be producing a couple more documents. This is sort of that quite factual. We will be producing another document which is going to dig into use cases and configuring for those use cases a little bit more. And we are going to be producing a document which is going to focus specifically on nested use cases. So using sort of nested Hyper-V or ESX or whatever it might be, and providing the connectivity in those use cases. Okay, so there are some documents that are in flight with respect to this. I'm currently working on those other documents at the moment. There is also something else that I just want to talk about quickly with respect to this, and it's something that we're starting to think to do. And I've got an ask basically, which is the reason that I'm actually going to mention this. So I just want to find something quickly. Just obviously because I had to reboot all my here's my tabs that I prepared earlier have all gone. So one of the things I just want to just talk about really quickly is if we think about the template gallery. I'm going to drag a window over here. One of the things we're thinking of with the template gallery is actually to put some labs in here, which are actually going to be labs to allow people to learn how to use the platform. So some labs to teach you how to use certain features, certain capabilities. So we're thinking of sort of basically calling these something like capability demos. So part of like our showcase structure. So there isn't anything in here at the moment that we would actually really sort of highlight in any great detail. You might not even be able to see this section yet. I don't think we've made it public. But one of the things that I'm working on, and it'd be interesting, and really what I'm after, would be what other things would you like to see in this category? If I go to the dashboard, one of the things that I'm currently building, and this will be a series of labs, this won't just be one, it's actually use labs in the template gallery, which will teach you how to use certain features. Okay, so this is one that I'm building on working with VM endpoints when you're working on Windows. So if I just edit the instructions in here, so the idea will be is you will have a lab that will be fully functional. Okay, so it will all be configured. Okay, and I appreciate this looks a bit ugly at the moment. I need to fix the CSS and stuff in here. But the idea with this is first and foremost is it will have 2 pages. So the first page will be based on the endpoint type that you select. Okay, so the idea being, you know, the SSH is the only one that I've filled in at the moment. This will basically sort of tell you a little bit about what it is. Okay, and then it will walk you through basically how you configure it. How do you set this thing up? Okay, so this would be how to get it installed, how to configure it. Okay, potentially like linking out to additional documentation and various other things. And then what there will be is there will be a second page. So the second page will be designed for you to actually look inside the VM or whatever it is on the left-hand side, whatever the environment is, and we will talk you through looking at how it's configured. So if you think about on here, the first thing we really talk about is getting it installed. Okay, so the first thing we have is what we'll show you what the lab profile's configured as. Okay, so they're the 2 SSH ports that are configured. So the next thing would then be, well, how do I validate whether OpenSSH is installed on Windows? So how do I do that? So basically, how do I go and check if it's installed? How do I check if it's running? Okay, and then the next piece would then be, well, actually, how do I then go and validate the configuration? So you think about, we're saying here, this has actually got 2 ports configured for SSH. What this is actually going to do is it's going to get you to look in specifically to look at the configuration file and highlight the points you're looking for, which are actually driving the configuration. So that's the idea. We're sort of going to build these. So hopefully we're going to tell you about the feature, how to configure it and stuff like that, and then actually give you a working environment and give you the context of how to sort of reverse engineer it so you can see how it's working. So that's something that we're thinking of. And this is going to be our, like, if you like, our proof of concept for this. So I'd love to know what you think about that. And obviously the other great thing is, what else would you like to know? Because it's easy for me to pick on something that we've only just released, but I'm sure we've got a backfill. So what would you like to know from an instructions point of view? How to do what with instructions? Or because there's no point in us creating something that tells you how to do highlight, so bold text or headings or stuff. It's working out what do we need to be. And of course, what other things from an environment point of view would be really valuable, and using it more in an educational context rather than here's something to clone and go and build off. Now, of course, you could do that. There's absolutely no reason you couldn't do that. But these are more educational based. So, ultimately, love to know if you think that's a good idea. Would love to know if there's other subjects you think, well, actually, if you had that'd be brilliant, because when we bring on new lab developers, we have to always teach them this. It'd be great if you could do something which was more generic and would help them. That would be really great for us to know. So, VM endpoints. Other things, we've talked about this before. The new dashboard will actually go general availability on the 31st of March. So for yourselves, hopefully when you sign in on the 1st of April, I would imagine, you should see the new dashboard. So we have shown this before, but for those that have not seen it, this is the sort of updated dashboard that we're bringing out. So in a lot of ways, the core functionality out the box is the same as it has been for a while. Oops, got the wrong. Just trying to find my browser tab that I've lost now. Okay. So you've got the ability to create a new lab, search for lab series and lab profiles and lab instances. Before, we used to have the favorites, so you'd still click the little star the same as always, and we had the lab instances. So one other thing that we've added is the lab profiles. So this will actually show you any lab profiles you've effectively touched. So you haven't had to run the lab profile. You might have edited it, something along those lines. It will appear in here. These columns can be sorted. You can sort of apply filters to them. You can choose to sort of hide columns. You can reveal columns, all sorts of things. So there's a whole load of stuff going in here. If you come in here and make a right old mess of this, and you think, oh, I didn't really want it like that, that's not happy. Of course, you can do things like reset, and it will put your view back to sort of where it was. And we're hopefully trying to sort of present the lab advisor in a slightly better light as well. Here, with respect to the lab advisor, what we're trying to do is sort of first of all show you the sort of the labs you've got with the highest severity. So at the moment, I've got one critical, and I think these are important. Okay, and then we order them based on the number of labs. So you can see in this section, this important section, even though I've got 3 sets of labs, we've actually ordered them based on the number of labs that have actually impacted. So the greatest number of labs appears at the top. These will become clickable, so you can just drill in and then get that filtered view straight away. So I can see the lab profiles that are actually being impacted by that. And of course, I can drill down just to the standard all view page as well. Okay. So the idea is, we're basically trying to make this a bit more obvious. We're going to start using and building new rules for Lab Advisor. So we really want to try and just sort of wake this up a little bit, put it a bit more back in the foreground, and sort of make it hopefully again a bit of a better experience for everybody else. So when you sign in on the 1st of April, this should be the dashboard that you see. That's what we'll be hoping for. Another feature that we've actually sort of just in the process of releasing, so you should see this in early April as well, is override theme at launch. So hopefully everyone's familiar with themes. So themes are a component that you can create in our platform, which allow you to bring your own branding. Oops, we'll just sign back in. Okay, so you can bring your logo, you can bring your colors, all those sorts of things, and you can control those by using the theme tool, which you will find on the API integrations tile, which I've lost. Oh, here it is, integration tile. So there's your theme. So you can use this to go and create, build themes, all those sort of things. And we've done lab developer workshops on themes. Now, so you end up in a situation where, for example, you've got a theme attached, whatever that theme might be. And of course, when I launch the lab, it will basically use whatever that theme brings in terms of colors and things along those lines. But of course, what you might want to do is you might want to update the theme. So what you can do is you can build your new theme and you can then test it by actually launching a lab and just get it to actually launch with an alternative theme. So just a temporary launch. So that way you can test to make sure the colors work. You can test to make sure the you can test to make sure the font spacing's all good, all those sorts of things. Nothing's broken in the lab. And then only when you're happy, you can actually switch the theme. So it's a way of testing without having to take the theme away, put a different one on, without having to duplicate the lab profile, anything along those lines. Okay. To be honest, this was, you might say that seems to be quite a minor thing. This was requested mostly for an internal reason. We have a whole load of demonstration labs that our sales team use. And those demonstration labs, excuse me, we personalize for new prospects. So we put their colors, their logos, all that sort of stuff in it. So we've actually got this situation where we actually have hundreds of lab profiles, which are all exactly the same lab, just with different themes attached, because you had to actually attach the theme to the lab profile. So this way, this allows us not to have to keep duplicating the lab profiles. We just build a theme and then we can launch the lab profile with the customer's theme, no problems at all. Okay. So that's really where that comes from. So it was really an internal request, but we see some customers might have a use for that, which could be quite beneficial. So we'll check where we are. Cool. Yeah, perfect. Other things, the new code version of the new instruction editor, again, will go live on the 31st of March. So that's 31st of March, sort of 8 p.m. Eastern normally. So again, 1st of April, you should see the new instructions editor. You will be using the new instructions editor today. Okay, we're going to be covering that and some of its features. And really one of the key things with the new instruction editor from my point of view and this lab developer workshop is it allows us to effectively advertise, show to you features that we have in our platform, which were buried in documents or sometimes not even documented. So, you know, very much a case of making it easier for you to find capability. I'll talk about this more in later on, but we are also bringing an instruction file import. So if you've got instructions in a Word document, rich text format document, or in Markdown, you can literally just drag them into our platform and it will actually go and format them. It would actually go and import those documents for you. Okay, so sort of give you a little demo of that. It's not available yet. It's good. We're going to go into beta in April. We've got a few things to work out around pattern matching and recognition. Okay, but hopefully this will be something you will be able to get your hands on pretty soon. So we're looking forward to that because we think for a lot of customers, that's going to be quite a valuable tool. This point doesn't matter to most of yourselves. Okay, this sort of matters to me being an illegal alien. Effectively, if you was configured as a non-US person, a number of the date fields on some of our dialog boxes didn't work correctly. So first and foremost, it presented the date fields in US format, but when you then tried to modify it, it modified it and put the date back in the European format, for example. It then errored. Okay, you then type the date format in the American format, and it went, "Oh, I'm going to error because you're not in the American format." So it just errored. Okay, which was a real problem. So basically, it's taken me a while, but we've managed to get the date formatting to work correctly on a couple of dialog boxes where it was broken. Okay, so that's just really something that's been fixed for us outside of America. Um, the other thing I think is really worthwhile mentioning, so some of you might have seen this because it has actually been released, is we've actually now released a new UI when it comes to committing changes to labs. So let me just go find a lab profile. I'm just going to power this lab profile up. Where do we want to be? This one will do me. Okay, and I'll just launch this. So what I'm talking. So what's this? So this. So the Skillable lab platform, when working with um, virtual machines, has always given you a very granular ability in terms of saving changes. You can save changes on a per disk, per VM basis. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. And for the majority of most customers, it's brilliant, it's fine. Because in reality, for I would say, the vast majority of customers on our platform, a big lab might be 5 VMs, 8 VMs, something in that region, and maybe the VMs have got a couple of disks each. So in reality, not massive. We have seen over the recent months, so over the last sort of 12 months, we've started to see more and more customers come along that are building labs that have got, potentially, 30 or 40 VMs in that lab. Okay. We're then starting to see scenarios where they might actually have 10, 20 virtual disks for a large number of the VMs. Okay. So if you think about the old user interface, just imagine you've got 10 VMs and each VM's got 10 disks. Okay. So just imagine under the old user interface, if you wanted to save all the disk changes when you've been working on the lab profile and updating it, okay, first and foremost, that's 100 boxes you've got to tick. You've got to tick each disk individually. Okay, so 10 disks, okay, on each VM, and you've got 10 VMs, that's 100 boxes you've got to tick. Also, each VM required you to put a note in. So you had to put a specific note in for each VM as well. So it was a required note. So in reality, this was not a very conducive experience. Okay, so here I've got a VM-based lab profile. Okay, this happens to have 3 virtual machines in it, so I'm just going to pop across to this virtual machine as well. You'll see why in a moment. Okay, just to sort of wake it up a little bit. And I've now done whatever changes that I wanted to do. So at this point, I'm now going to go through the normal commit changes process. So when I get to the commit changes and I get to the actual box for committing the changes, you will see this interface has changed. Okay. So the key thing is there are 2 new sections. So the first section is opened during session. Okay. And then there is a not opened during session. Okay. So effectively what these 2 sections represent is which VMs did you click on when you was just doing all of your updates. So if you remember, I clicked on the Kali VM and I clicked on one of the Xeon VMs. I didn't click on the other. Okay. So the Kali and the Xeon VM is actually in the, you open these during the session, and then the other one is you didn't open. And what we also do by default is we effectively tick the machines you touched during the session. We tick those to say they're the ones you want to save the disks on. Okay. And what you'll notice is we've got this top level tick box, which then effectively would tick all of the disks. So let's say, even though I didn't physically connect to this, I wanted to save the disks for this machine here, I can just tick that box and that will tick all the disks that are attached to it. Okay. So that will go down, and if there was 10 disks attached to it, it would basically select all 10 of them. So going back to my scenario with 10 VMs, each VM's got 10 disks. So first of all, we've gone from clicking 100 checkboxes. Now, worst case, tick 10. Okay, because you can just tick the VM level ones, and it would then tick all the disks inside that VM. Of course, if you actually touched each of the VMs as you went through the update of the lab, our platform would automatically tick them as well, because they would all go into the open during session and they get ticked automatically. So potentially, if you've interacted with every VM, we've gone from 100 check ticks to none. Okay, just to try and improve that efficiency for lab developers, and also to stop those situations where lab developers miss ticking something. Okay, of course, the note is no longer required, it's optional. So you can just use the big note box at the top to describe what you've done, more than likely more efficient. Okay. But of course, if you want the granularity of before, I could absolutely come into here and I could choose to take ticks out of individual boxes, individual discs, if that's what I want to do. Absolutely no problem at all. Okay. So that's the UI change that we've made. And for the majority of customers, it's really going to make a massive impact. But actually, for some customers, this is going to be significant. It's going to give them that extra safety net that they know they've ticked everything, because they can just do this top level look. And if they wanted to save everything, providing all the boxes are ticked, they know they've not missed a disk lower down. So it's going to allow them to be far more efficient when it comes to sort of working with this environment. So that's what we mean by that. So hopefully some of you have seen that. And if you haven't, now hopefully you won't panic when you get to there and go, oh, this box has changed. You now know why that box has changed and what the changes are. So just a screenshot, really just highlighting that. Okay.